Very traumatized and wasn't able to come back to work afterwards. Lehman Brothers had 618 people in One World Trade Center. We had floors 38 through 40. A lot of the technology people and just a lot of the servers were all housed there. And one man from our company, Ira Zaslow, was killed. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was a big user of the library also. He was a senior technology person. So we did lose one person from the firm. I have a family friend who's more like a cousin who was killed. I worked at Marsh McLennan. She was only there for 4 months when it happened. So there's a lot of people that I knew like that. Good friend from high school, Peter Byfield, who was a fireman, who was killed. It happened to be his day off, and he was in Lower Manhattan, and he was coming out of a doctor's office and saw what happened and ran to the firehouse that's right next door to Deutsche Bank, and just took out his wallet, wrote his name down, Peter Byfield, engine company, whatever, and said, "I'm borrowing your bunker gear and I'll be back."
People in the insurance companies and things. The sad thing is that so many of them were located in the two towers, and they're just completely gone. You know, we'll never see them again. So that's a hard part to realize. And occasionally, what comes up for me is that, you know, I'll get we'll be processing, say, an overdue in our catalog, and I'll see where the address is, and it's, you know, the World Trade Center, or we'll process an invoice or something, and that just reminds me of those people who are gone.
We were in the second tower on the 38th, 39th, and 40th floor, and everyone who was in the office got out. And we are very, very grateful for that. Some employees lost relatives. The firm lost some clients. But we were just very, very grateful that as a unit, our firm had been spared the loss of life.
From what I understand, you know, a lot of people stayed, you know, and that's why, you know, they were killed. And culturally, too, from what I understand, people that worked at some of the foreign companies where it's not part of the culture, you know, people in the Port Authority were telling them, no, go back to your desk, you know, whereas a lot of the American-born people just, like, got out of the building. We're not a command society.
I lost a friend in the towers who died, and he's someone I'd known for 15 years in my neighborhood, and saw him quite often.
The next couple of days, I mean, I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do with myself. I went over to the Red Cross, but they wouldn't take my blood because I had been out of the country last year. I went to the firehouse in my neighborhood. I went out with a friend. You know, it was just, again, I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had to do something. And the city was really bizarre. It was just really eerie. You know, it was quiet. There were no cars. It was just eerie.
When we got back the first week, I don't know, everyone was stunned. You know, there's just so much to deal with. You had to go through security checkpoints. You had to get off the train and walk from, well, I had to walk from the village, which is a half-hour walk. And I mean, the whole first week, I was just numb. I was in shock, traumatized.
The days after were about trying to understand this and also to have something to do. Because what we all set out to do then was to be in communication with each other, to find out if everyone was okay, and to have a job to do. And so we spent a few days at home because there was no place to go. And then we were able to go to other Thompson offices around the city in New Jersey to work. We didn't know what that was going to be, but it was better than sitting at home and spending hours and hours in front of the television.
It was very difficult. It was very, very difficult going back to work. We went back about a week after when everything had changed. The area, downtown Lower Manhattan, was completely different. It was very solemn. There was terrible smell of smoke, and the smell of smoke hit you even before you got out of the subway. Probably when you were 2 or 3 stations away, you started smelling this terrible smoke. And when we got back, it was very welcoming. Everybody was very glad to see one another, and people were, you know, hugging each other and kissing each other and talking about it. But you could see that the tone was very different, and basically had changed a great deal. People, that area is a very bustling area. Lower Manhattan had always been very bustling. When you got out of the subway, you'd hear people talking, people would be laughing. Everybody was very, very solemn. In the library itself, many of us certainly felt a commitment to our students and the faculty and our patrons, and we wanted as much as possible to get back to providing them the service that we pride ourselves on. But it was hard because we were going through a lot of problems ourselves, and a number of people in the library were having major psychological problems. And one of the things that they did offer was a psychological debriefing session they had from the counseling center, and they had brought in some other consultants. And I could see that people in the library didn't want to go themselves, but they wanted to talk about it. They were constantly talking, there were problems, so I had arranged for a group session. And many of us participated, including myself, and we just opened up. I think people were very anxious to talk, to express their feelings, to express their concern, their sadness, their fears, their anxiety. I mean, people were really anxious to come back to Lower Manhattan. You know, and we still were under terrorist threats, and most of us were having very long commutes in addition to the other problems. Many people were having problems sleeping, so we were very tired, even though we had been off for a while, and it was really quite traumatic getting back.
Well, the entire collection was lost. It was, the library was basically a reference library shared with the Office of the Council. So it was pretty much 50-50 a law library and then a library full of trade information, stuff having to do with the tariff and the history of the tariff, a lot of stuff like that. It's all gone. All the archival stuff is gone for good, which is a real shame. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there that nobody else had. And we would get calls from all over the country about certain things having to do with primarily the tariff and trade issues and stuff like that. Gone, you know.
We had a lot of historical materials against the wall of the awards room, and from the pictures I could see it looked as if the awards room might have been missed. And right on the other side was where we had all of our historical stuff, and I kept thinking, maybe. But no. I called someone out at Fresh Kills, and he said nothing. He said there are fires that went through there. I guess the fire actually came from 7, apparently. But he said it was 1800 degrees. He said there's nothing, at least no paper. We lost one of the more complete collections of rulings in the country. We also had historical materials. We had historical materials going back to the 1840s. I had one document at least on vellum, which was signed by, I believe it was Thomas Jefferson, I think. Anyway, it was one of the early presidents. It was more or less just locked away. I think I looked at it once and locked it up. We also had a lot of the older actual customs working documents that people still on occasion used. I had kicked myself many times, and any archivists out there can tell people to send their stuff to archives. because I very selfishly kept a lot of that. I sent some material to archives, but I really didn't want to give some of it up. I had some plans for some early stuff from the early teens, of maybe getting it onto CD-ROM and then sending it to archives. And of course that didn't happen.
It was strange getting back into the building. We even took some field trips together in small groups to go back in and kind of get used to the feeling of it. Our building is right at Ground Zero. It's where all the tourists come to view Ground Zero. It looks very different now because the building is, there's just a construction site there. But those first days back in the building, we did see every day remnants of the towers, and it was a site that we had to see every day, and so we relived it every day in a sense.
And there's just, I mean, the whole area I work in now is damaged. There's tons of concrete powder on everything, on buildings. It's just going to be blowing around and coating stuff for years. It just all looks dirty.
It's still pretty bad because it's like, I can see, when I got out my front door and I turned to the right, I could see the World Trade Center. And now there's nothing there. And every morning when I have to go and take the subway, I sort of look at nothing. I mean, for a while it was worse because we were looking at the part of the World Trade Center that was just burned out and was still standing. Now they've taken that down. So every morning it's kind of a reminder.
One of the things that I used to do on my lunch hour with other friends was go to the plaza at the Trade Center. It was such a fun place, you know, it was such a lively place, and it was truly a democratic place. That's another thing. I just don't know that these terrorists understood the nature of the place, because yes, it's capitalistic, yes, it's rich. You could have a $100 lunch if you wanted to, you know, at any one of those restaurants, but you could have a $1 hot dog from the vendor. You know, and you could enjoy the music, the free programs. Everybody went there, the orchid show, the different cultural events. You could walk down to the harbor, see the boats. You could sit in a park that they had there. You could shop. And, you know, they had so many cultural and just fun kinds of things. So I think, to me, I just felt like, well, they've taken the fun out of life, you know? What makes going to work something special in a way, because there were all these little shops and places to go to, and they're gone.
You have two ways of looking at this thing. Either you give up and you shrivel away, or you get your courage up and you say life goes on, and we're going to beat these bastards, and you keep going.
And I am always surprised that people say to me, you know, you seem to have handled it so well. And, you know, people handle things differently, especially depending upon what you've been through in your life. And believe me, there are times where, as I said, I walked through Grand Central Station one day and saw the pictures of all of those people who were missing, and that's tough. That's really, it was really difficult to do, but, you know, you have to just keep going.
I've had people say to me, well, you know, you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know. And the first time I heard that, I thought, it's unusual, but that's wrong. We were all at the right place at the right time. We were at our jobs doing what we were paid to do. The only people in the wrong place at the wrong time were the bastards who flew the planes into the buildings, you know. And you have to remember that.
Well, at work I have a great relationship with our staff. It's small, and you know, I don't think we could get any closer. But I think it changed a lot of people in this city. They're just more considerate now. I mean, this was a hate crime, and everyone's been a victim now. So I hope that at least people learned something from it.
I don't feel a lot of anger. I feel more a sense of loss.